So we are excited to present Don't Tell Me What to Do. Welcome back. We are excited to have you join us today for Don't Tell Me What to Do, Parenting Practices in Indigenous Communities. So before we begin, we just want to remind everyone about the Zoom for our sessions. As you can see, it is on the screen. Some of you already know because you were here earlier. But we do please ask that you keep your microphones off while the speaker is speaking. You're welcome to have your cameras on or off throughout the session, but we encourage you to have them on when asking questions. We hope to have Q&A portions at the end of the session, and for those times that are more interactive, please use the hand raise emoji to request to speak. If you need help, the name of the tech support person will be near the top of your chat box in the session for you to direct message if you have questions. The chat is also a great way to interact with other attendees in the session. Please review our legal disclaimer, also found on your screen momentarily. Here are our financial disclosures for this talk. We are full of gratitude for our presenters in this session, Violet Duncan and Kimberly Moore Salas. Violet Duncan is Plains Cree and Tano from the Kihiwan Cree Nation. And I apologize in advance, Violet, if I get any of these mispronounced. You can correct me. She has toured nationally and internationally as an author, educator, dancer, and storyteller. Violet facilitates workshops to promote spiritual wellness and cultural education across the United States, Canada, and Europe. After becoming a mother of 4 and seeing the need for Native representation in literature, she took it upon herself to author 3 award-winning children's books, I Am Native, When We Dance, and Let's Hoop Dance. Her newest book, I Am Native, released in 2020, shares a glimpse into the wonderful world of a multi-generational Native family. This book showcases beautiful imagery of family members passing down traditions in both traditional and modern ways. She has recently joined the family of Random House with 2 new children's books coming out in 2022, so stay tuned. Kimberly Moore Salas is born for Nakai Dene Mexican people and from Sisnahini Blackstreet people clans. Born in Tuba City, maternally from the Tolani Lake, Arizona, located in the southwestern area of the Navajo Nation. Kim has been an international board certified lactation consultant, over 10 years of experience in peer counseling, clinical and educational lactation. Kim's work has been inclusive of tribal and culturally diverse communities, serving the needs of prenatal, newborns, and postpartum mothers and families. She is a co-instructor for the Indigenous Breastfeeding Counselor Training Course, providing cultural breastfeeding and clinical education to those that can serve their community throughout Turtle Island. She has also worked independently with Changing Woman Initiative, assisting families with breastfeeding support out of New Mexico. She has completed her 2nd term on the United States Breastfeeding Committee Board of Directors. Thank you, Violet and Kimberly, for being here today. Take it away.
Okay, good afternoon. This is just my disclosure statement. I have no conflict of interest to disclose. Okay, so I'm not going to share my bio. My name is Kim Rosales. I am Dene. I'm also an Indigenous birth worker. And I just want to acknowledge the homelands of the Atam and the Pishpash people. So the presentation we are going to share is just basically what the title says is Don't Tell Me What to Do, perspectives from Indigenous women in breastfeeding and parenting. So historically in Western society, dominant culture often assert themselves into our space when engaging us in their care. So sometimes this can result in more harm than good. and this has been, an issue for a long time. And also it has been detrimental in our way of life. Over the past decade, Indigenous mothers have been reclaiming what is inherently theirs, and are rediscovering traditional ways to nurture and promote healthy living within our families. It is important that our voices are heard so medical professionals can be mindful of our cultural values, addressing best practice approach in patient care, such as breastfeeding and parenting practices. Next slide. So this is just some of the contents we're going to go over briefly. Early history is going to be, oh, sorry, go ahead. Next slide. So early history, when we think about pre-contact just means before 1492 or before Christian settlers came in contact with Indigenous people here in our land. So pre-contact, we had fluence of language among our tribal people. We had spirituality. We had a archaeological social structure. We cultivated our food, and we honored Mother Earth. Unfortunately, during colonization, after pre-contact, this process was called colonization. This is the period of introduction of diseases, alcohol, followed by traumatic events. And also it was the start of the infestation of wars among our people, broken treaties, resulting in a removal of our language, our religion, our culture, our food, and our land. Next slide. And so assimilation. So assimilation, what that means is the absorption and integration of people's ideas and core culture. This is to become civilized and what we call the so-called United States. As a result of this, there was a time of removal of our family structures that changed the course of our history. So the boarding school era is one of the very much historical trauma that we continue to have to this day. So boarding school era occurred in the 1860s, well into the 1970s. And also there is still some boarding schools that are in existence today, but it's not rooted as much as it was in like Christianity. And so that's has changed. And some of the boarding schools, for example, like on Navajo, I know where my dad actually went, their boarding schools now run by the tribe itself. So they're, dealing with some of these things a little bit different than before. When it comes to the boarding school era, it was a time period where kill the Indian and save the man was loosely spoken and accepted on the treatment of our Native people. The U.S. government saw this as a problem to get rid of the Indian problem. So that's during the boarding school era, which included like hair cutting, being punished for prayer ceremony, using our language, and we were subjected to abuse and sexual violence to our children. And the beginning of this time period was really dismantling our first sacred teachings of protecting our children. So our most sacred was affected. So our babies and children were taken from our mothers. And that's really how things started happening to interrupt the balance of our family. Next slide. So during assimilation, we had the Relocation Act, which is part of the process that happened, which is the Indian Removal Act in 1830. Native people were forced off our land and relocated to other parts of the country, sometimes thousands of miles away, causing separation, hardship, and even thousands of deaths. So 2 examples of this Relocation Act was the Trail of Tears. I'm sure some of you may have heard of that. And for our Navajo people would be the Long Walk. Again, devastating to the way of our life. Next slide. Assimilation also impacted how we took care of ourselves. So healthcare practices had an impact and also disrupted the way we took care of each other in our communities. Next slide. During this period, the U.S. government began to hold themselves to treaty obligations, which included education, land management, healthcare. However, not all the time was this our best interest of our people, and it was not the best and how they took care of us. So one of the things that we can think about when we think about Indian Health Services is they performed forced sterilizations on our people in the 1960s and 70s to our Native women without consent. The government thought that the birth rates were too high and should be somehow controlled by using this act. Women thought they were going in for medical treatment or procedures and were not protected. So they forced sterilized these women. Even though legislation passed a law to protect women, Native women, from these harsh practices. It continued between 1970 and 1976. 20 to 50% of Native women were sterilized during this time. One of the main things that shifted also was how we gave birth. So birth practices in hospital settings were also impacted. So decline in home births, which resulted in more health complications for mom and baby, such as traumatic births, and which then you would have lower breastfeeding rates. Western medicine definitely changed the landscape of women's healthcare and body autonomy. And one of the most controversy, I think, too, I used to work in a hospital for almost 10 years here locally in Phoenix, is some of the language we used about safe sleep practices. And that's always been a controversy of how we would, take care of our babies during when they would sleep. And so that has been and still continues to be a controversy among medical professionals and, the community of people of color or Native people. And also just think that this can impact how we feel about our parenting practices and our traditional ways. And sometimes I've heard just language of feeling shameful of how we, take care of our babies. And so that was something that, this impacted how we would be with our families and breastfeeding, where we would place our babies to sleep. Next slide. So this is just another example of this booklet that was published in 1916. If you ever see it, you can actually Google this. It is a real booklet that was given to our Native people and used in hospital settings. So some of the language that was in this particular booklet was, for example, some Indian mothers nurse their babies for 2 to 3 years. This is bad practice both for mother and baby. A Navajo cradle board, this is not good for the baby as it restricts the baby's movements. There are many Indians a marked and tender affection for their children, but too often the wife, the mother, is regarded and treated as a burden barrier. I wish we might see this habit overcome, for it is distinctly barbaric. So these are actually languages used in this that we gave our Native mothers. Next slide. So just to think about why this is important in this history of our Native people when it came to the early history. And again, there's so much more that we can discuss, but I know we have limitations on time. But I just wanted to share this, why it's important, and just think about how the structure of families was impacted, how this impacted the hierarchy of the social family dynamic, and just that historical trauma during the relocation of our Native people on reservations, boarding schools, and healthcare practices has been affected and is still infected today, especially with bias and racism. That's been very much a problem in our people of color and in communities when it comes to just breastfeeding, um, where we put our babies to sleep, how we parent our children. Um, but knowing that this can impact how we view our families and how we communicate can definitely change the landscape of our dynamic. And I'm going to go ahead and bring in Violet, just because I was going to talk more about like kinship and all the things, but I think as we explore more of this with Violent, you are definitely going to get some information on why these things are impactful to our Native women, our Native mothers. And I think we're going to maybe address even like the cradle board is one of the examples that we talked about earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and shift it onto Violent, and she's going to share her experience with some language that was used with your past births and being and having babies.
Thank you so much, Kim. Danse nitigasun kayas kisigusquel, da fue mio kisiga no mito tak, da fue mio kisiga nagamukti. I was so excited about this presentation, and now that we're starting it, it's like seeing the history and seeing all of the important information go on. I'm like kind of getting all shaky.
Mm-hmm.
And I only see on my screen where it says, why is this important? So I don't know if my camera is on or not. And I'm like, I'm all nervous now to like mess around. I don't want to accidentally go off.
We can go to the next screen just to kind of have a picture.
Oh, yay. Hi.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, hi, Kim. Okay, welcome everyone. Of course, the messages during the chat, during the entire time, we're going to have time for questions after. But I wanted to share a little bit of when we hear about our history, and we hear about things like 1492, 1800s, this ended in the 1970s, just to give some modern day context. My grandmother went to residential school. My father attended residential school. I attended the day school, the church-run day school in 1991. So this didn't end in the 1800s, 1900s, 1950s. It didn't end actually in Canada, where I'm from, until 1996. So I was like 12 years old by the time they finally closed the doors and said, maybe these residential schools are not a good thing. And that's because my grandparents and my parents and my ancestors before that fought hard for these residential schools to close because they were so devastating to language, to culture, definitely to parenting, to all of our lifestyle. And there's a lot of resources out there on that. So coming into parenthood, when I had my first baby in 2009, I was really, really excited. But let me take you to 2006, the year before I met my husband. I had decided that I'm not going to have children. The legacy of children in our family was too harsh. There was alcoholism, there was abuse. It was too scary. Being a mother was not on the floor for me. Of course, I wanted to have my own baby, but bringing that baby into community and what I felt it was just seemed too dangerous. And I was really terrified. And then I meet my husband, I fall in love, and he's like, let's have children. And I took baby steps. Like, it was terrifying to finally decide we're going to start a family, we're going to have this baby. So preparing for baby to come was much more than kind of finding the partner. It was deciding, okay, a lot of the things that I went through need to stop. And that began with deciding to have the baby. Going through pregnancy, understanding that pregnancy is ceremony, which kind of conflicts with modern society because it was like appointments, check on baby, check on you. And instead of kind of going internal, I had to show like my body to the whole world, and it felt like very exposing. So right at the beginning, it just did not feel like this was in my hands already. But I'm like, we're going to have this baby. And so when we go into childbirth, of course, my people sing when we bring baby in, but we weren't allowed to bring anybody in, only my husband. And if that's not enough, like I didn't have any women. And so I had to sneak in my sister-in-law. I had to sneak in my mother-in-law, and they're not Cree like me. So they tried to help as best they could, but even that was like a barrier. So as we keep passing through these barriers, I knew that I wanted baby to breastfeed. And I'm not going to go into that, but basically that was not very supported. We were on access, and trying to figure out even the latch took like a month, and it was just painful for me and baby. And we didn't know who to go to. Turns out we had a really good friend who was a nurse, and she really helped me to start our breastfeeding journey. But when it was day one of the hospital, we had our cradle board and we have our moss bag. And right away, you put baby in your moss bag. And a moss bag looks like this. And I know it's not the normal type of swaddling technique that you see at hospitals, but it actually, here, I put this teddy bear in there for context. It's actually, it's how baby is swaddled. So you put the swaddled baby inside the moss bag, and then you tie baby up here. And right away, the nurses came in, that's too tight, baby doesn't like it. And I mean, I was a new mother, and I'm thinking, aren't we supposed to listen to baby? Aren't we supposed to hear if baby's crying? Like, isn't that what we're supposed to be listening for? But instead it was a reflection of, I don't know what that is. I don't like that. Get it out of here. And I took baby out, and I was freaking out, and I came home, and I had baby kind of just like loose, and I called my mom, and she's like, how come baby's not in her moss bag? And I said, I don't know. I think the nurses said that the baby was too tight. And my mom's like, what are you talking about? Get that baby in that moss bag, because once baby is in there, they feel safe. They're feel like they're constantly held. It's actually much easier to hold your baby and to do tasks. And baby's really content. So as soon as I put baby in there, what we thought we had a colicky baby, she settled right down. And I was like, wow, this thing is pretty cool. And my mom said, well, yeah, we've been using it for thousands of years. Of course, it's going to do its job. And right there was an affirmation of, okay, I'm doing the right thing. And that was the very first time that I felt like, okay, I'm doing the right thing, because baby's happy. And so that was the beginning of my fight for using the moss bag, and eventually using the cradle board, because it's foreign to somebody. They don't know what it is. They don't know why you use it. And then I seen something when I was we have 4 babies. When I was on baby number 3, I'm not even kidding, I saw something that resembled our moss bag in Target. And I was like, what the, how is that possible?
Of
And
course
I
you
thought
would.
yeah, I'm like, that is so not fair, because not only was I ridiculed for like 8 years about putting my 3 babies at the time in moss bags, that it's too tight, that they can't breathe. And then I see it replicated, and then everybody's cool with it. And they're like, oh yeah, I got that at Target too. And I'm like, oh my God. And it's really frustrating, because now as a mom of 4, I finally found my voice. I can finally say, no, baby feels safe and secure. That's the words I need to use. No, this has been in my family for thousands of years, like hundreds and hundreds of years. We've been using this technology, the moss bag. The cradle board, which is separate here, this goes on the back, and they all look different. This one is Cree. From Northern Alberta, so this is what we would wear. This is deer skin, and like it has a hard back. So people are like, that's too hard for baby. And I'm like, I know, that's why we put them on a cushion and then put them in here. It's not like we're just beginning the invention of the wheel. And so cradle boards are meant for us to put them on their back. And later on, like when baby wants to be held, and your house looks crazy, you throw baby in the cradle board, you throw them on your back, and you're able to sweep, you're able to do dishes, or they're able to just sit upright, and you can like Netflix and binge, because baby is like standing like this, and you're not constantly, that when they're wanting to walk and stand, instead of constantly holding them and hurting your arms, you just hold baby right there, and they hop and they do what they need to do. Baby stays in the moss bag. My eldest stayed until she was 2 years old. Yes, she was way too big. Her head went way up here, but she just loved it so much. But my son was such a big guy. He only stayed until he was 8 months old. So there's not like a hard and fast, like car seats, like the ages and the safety. It's about the comfort of baby. And that is the whole part of it, is listening to your baby. and getting that communication and developing that bond. And when we hear about the different cries, that's what we're listening to. We're listening to when they're uncomfortable. Okay, it's time to take them out. When they need to be changed, when they're teething. And that's kind of what really helped me with my journey into motherhood, was the cradle board, deciding I'm going to keep going with this. Baby likes it. It makes me, it's easier on my arms. And it shows my other children that this is how we can love our babies in our way. Because sometimes it's hard to say, like, we love our baby. Instead of verbally, we show our baby, look, we put baby in the cradle board. And then we're also able to pass baby around without people touching their hands or kissing their face. And you have the baby like that. So that's just a part of it. Learning that our history goes right until today. And my children are the first ones in our family that haven't gone to residential school, that haven't gone and been taken away. And it terrified me when I started my kids' journeys into kindergarten. And it wasn't because I'm going to miss them so much. It was because, are they going to take my babies away? And that's real. And a lot of people are like posting first day of kindergarten pictures. And I'm like terrified. This is the age that my dad was taken. This is the age that he didn't come back until he was 16. And so, every day of kindergarten, even now, my littlest one is in grade 2. My eldest is in grade 9. And it still feels like that. I still want them to stay home with me and learn from me. But darn that algebra, I could not figure it out.
That historical trauma is real, right? You have these embedded fears that something's going to happen or your baby's being taken away. My mom and dad were at residential schools too. And I wasn't. Me and my brothers weren't. My cousins were in my generation. And it changes the way you want to parent your children. And when it comes to the cradle board, I mean, that is a safe sleep practice, right? It does promote all the things that we can do to parent, but also get things done, right? Because I mean, we didn't hold a baby the whole time, like harvesting or going to get a sheep or a buffalo, right? We had stuff to do. We had to get work done. And so these things that when we are encountering medical professionals or other people, they have to be mindful of what that looks like for us and how we carry on these traditions. And sometimes this is our first, some generations that haven't done it for years, and then now we're doing it. And I think it's a really important conversation to have with young people,
and it's that very first generation or that very first person that is breaking down that barrier, breaking down that wall. And so I know that my parents, they didn't bring alcohol into our home because they knew what happened when alcohol was, I saw it with aunties and uncles and grandparents and cousins. I saw what happened when we brought that. So my parents were the very first ones that would do that. That would mean every time we came to visit anybody, they would go in first and check it out. I don't have to do that because they did that for me. And so going forward as a parent or as a human being, I know, where people in my family know that our home is a safe place. If you want to bring your kids anytime, you can come and visit with us. But it wasn't like that for my parents' generation. And I remember thinking like they just wanted to visit without kids. Like that's when we'd be in the car wondering, but I have to give like a huge shout out to parents who are doing that first, stopping alcohol, or that first using the moss bag, that first using the cradle board, that first advocacy for themselves and their culture because they believe it's right. And there's going to be so many mistakes. And to give that because we're advocating maybe for the first time in our lives. And when these health professionals, they have to see it that this is the first time we're fumbling on our words. This is the first time we're saying this, and it's not going to sound perfect. And maybe when my daughter goes in to have her baby, she'll have the words much more clear. Or when my son wants to have his baby, or whatever it is, it's just so important that we find that we carve it out, we start that path,
Yeah.
and then
Yep.
they brick it.
Yeah. I
So
also want to,
amazing.
yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you both for the information. I'm the timekeeper. We're at 1:55. I want to hear what you were going to say, Kim, but I just wanted to say thank you very, very much. This is important information to share with everyone. And I know that when I saw the exhibit at the Heard Museum about boarding schools, I cried a lot in that. It's very, very sad. And I wish I had some powers that I could heal all of it, because it's devastating. And the fact that you are changing that, you're shifting that in this generation is just so beautiful to hear. So thank you very much for all of your information. So Camille, are there any questions in the chat?
Yeah, so one
Over to you.
is, yeah, it says, Violet, if you ask to keep your baby's placenta, I believe it is traditional in most Indigenous cultures to bury the placenta on the family's land. Did you have any pushback from the hospital staff or policies?
Okay, so there's two sides to this story. For me, I was too scared, honestly, to ask for it, because I felt scared of healthcare providers and what they're going to say and what they're going to do, because this is my baby and I didn't want to give them any reason to take this baby away from me. And so I was like, I have this baby now, I'm just going to be quiet and do whatever they need to do. But my husband, that's actually his role in his culture. He's Apache, he's not Cree. So we got to like combine worlds of different tribes as well. Instead of like, there's no like Native American way to birth and to do things. There's different tribes. And so in the Apache way, they get the afterbirth, the men. And in the morning, the next morning, right at sunrise, they dig a hole beside a tree that is a young, I don't know how to say like a sapling, but it's a young tree. And they dig a hole there very far away. And so we visit that mountain, and I don't know what tree it is, but we visit that area, and he takes my daughter even today, like to go visit her tree. That's how we introduce our children to the Mother Earth, saying that even if you're away from family, that you are always surrounded by your family. The plant people are now your relatives. And so he took that upon him to tell them, we are taking home the afterbirth with us. We have something to do with it. And so I did get pushback, but I definitely didn't push because I didn't like I said, I'm the very first one fumbling. So now baby number 3, I was finally confident. And I said, hey, we take the afterbirth. And they were like, why? What do you want to do with this? And it's like, yeah, we do ceremony with it. And that's the words I started to use. But those words weren't there. Yeah. Baby number 1 and baby number 2. But yeah, those are the two sides. So it's really important to surround yourself also with people who are supportive and will advocate when you don't have the words.
And there's so many teachers, and each tribe is different, right? With the cradle board, we have people that harvest the wood. For Navajo people, we harvest the wood. It's all ceremony. We don't just make cradle boards for fun. We make it for, it's part of ceremony, and that baby sleeps. Also, baby, when they sleep, they go to the star people or they go to holy people. So it's all ceremony, and that's, that's what we need to share when we're in these spaces. Like, this is all ceremonies, as part of our culture, and this is how we do it.
And also to not be too afraid of the word ceremony. At first, when I was a young mom, ceremony sounded like mysterious, and it sounded like something that you can't interrupt. But every morning when my babies leave for school and I do their hair, I am in ceremony when I'm brushing their hair. And I'm giving them, and I'm reminding them, okay, how was school today? Well, remember to be kind to everyone. Remember, we are relatives of this land, and that we're not going to throw anything on the guard. Whatever they need to hear that day, that is ceremony. So it's not something that's constantly like private and tribal. Yeah. Ceremony can be done just when you're having that connection and you feel it. There's something is happening here. That's what we also refer to as ceremony.
What is the difference, Violet, between that and ritual? Because what I'm hearing is being very mindful and present too, which is so beautiful.
I have to say, I would separate like ritual. I would separate totem. I would separate, there's also another word. And those are words that often people try to use under the hat of Native American when it's not. Those are kind of words that were developed. I forget the other word, like there are medicine men, medicine women. They have their roles. When you meet them, you're like, this looks like a regular person. I was expecting like wind in their hair and buckskin and, you know, something spiritual, but they're just regular people who have that, who help you to be present. And sometimes you'll feel that even in a child, like somehow a child will ground you and floor you. And you'll be like, that was really profound. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
And that's because they're carrying medicine in them. And in that moment, they were a medicine person in that moment. And maybe that's who they become later. And maybe they're a nurse, maybe they're a counselor, maybe they're a medicine man doing actual ceremony in the community. But it's wild because we have this idea of what ceremony looks like, what a medicine man or medicine woman looks like, when it's not actually, it's not forbidden.
Yeah.
as
It's a state of being and a state of being, right? It's just
Yeah, that's what
spiritual
I'm hearing.
connection, for sure. Yep.
It's beautiful to know. Okay, are there any, let's see, we have a couple of more minutes. Any other questions, Camille, in the chat?
I don't see any at this time. Just a lot of your stories are beautiful, and we're grateful to have you here and to sharing those stories with us. We're so grateful for that. So thank you.
Any parting words that you ladies would like to say to us? You've given us so much beautiful information. It's wonderful. Thank you for being here today and a part of this important information for all of us to know.
I would like to just say, listen to the mothers.
Yes, and I would just like to say that sometimes motherhood starts when you become an auntie, starts when you become a friend. And I think that we try to, as a society, we put a lot of pressure on mothers and moms to do all the stuff. And when we branch out and we give that same honoring to our aunties and to our grandparents, I think that really helps to spread the work around and not make it so like motherhood and what we need to do as moms, that, you know, it really is community. And to take that as like a way to reach out to not even just your relatives, like your family, but community is your neighbor. Community is that caregiver at the park. Community is all of us.
Well, that is a perfect way to close out this session. We do have one question in the chat. Maybe you can answer it, Violet, if you can see the chat, because we do need to wrap it up. But it's, how can I come alongside these mothers through the constraints of policy and healthcare?
Me too. I don't know. I think that when you find someone, you just are like, this is my person. Now, this is what I tell my children when they go to school, that they'll find their people. You don't have to go and find them. You'll find your people because they're the ones who share your interests. They're the ones who make you feel good. And so when we're trying to look out for like our community, we don't have to look for mothers and fathers and families. The ones who make us feel good, the ones who make us feel like they are holding us up, that is your community. Those are your people. And for me, I'm like, I don't want to leave my home. I'm an introvert, you know, I like my house and I like the food in my pantry and everything, and I don't want to leave, and that might stop me from finding my people. But you go out there and you find them, and when you find a good one, you hold on to them, because that is how we continue to keep our community close. And a lot of people are like, you know, I got my sister and I got my aunt and we have all these people around us, but that doesn't have to be the ones, you know, immediate relatives. Just go and find your people. And it's bonus if it's relatives, yeah, because then, you know, you could just walk around in jammies right away, skip to the good stuff.
Yeah.
But
those kinship values are so important when it's raising families. We can't do it by ourselves, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Beautiful. One last item that was mentioned by Amanda in the chat. The Navajo term for our aunties on our mother's side are Shimyazahi. Did I get that?
Shimayaje.
I didn't get it right. Thank you so much. And basically you are referring to your aunt as your younger mother or little mother. That's beautiful. Oh, I wish we had another half an hour with both of you. This is so important. So thank you.
I didn't even go through my whole PowerPoint because I wanted to share Violet, because I know she has a lot of good knowledge. So yeah, I think I cut out 10 slides.
Well, thank you so much. Know that you can reach out to message our speakers today through the WOVA app. So please do that. So now we need a little break. Thank you again, ladies. You are awesome. And a few reminders before we move into our next break. Connect, collaborate, and keep the conversation going on the community boards. Don't forget to be active on that WOVA platform. Take a look at the leaderboards and see where you land. Not only can you build your network and connect with others, you'll earn points, and check out the Win a Prize tab to learn more about our awesome prizes. With that, we'll take a short break and we'll resume for our final session of the day in 4 minutes at 2010 called Humming for the Heart with Carmen Guerrera and Peggy Visacaro. Make sure you come to this. Don't shortchange yourself by leaving the ecosystem now. It'll be a wonderful presentation. We'll see you then.